And once again, thank you so much for joining us this evening. My name is Eva Reyes, and I'm the Director of Parent and Family Relations. If this is your first time joining us for a Real Talk series, welcome. I'm excited that you're here, that you're taking advantage of all these resources. And if you're a returner, um, I'm grateful that you're here and that you find these sessions valuable. Um, so what we're going to do, we're going to discuss the academic financial connection, what you guys should know so that you're able to support your student. And with that said, we're going to start with introductions of our panelists.
Hi, good evening. My name is Cesar Castro. I'm from the Academic Advisement Center.
Hi everyone, my name is Paola Chaparro. I am also from the Gloria S. Williams Advisement Center. I'm one of the advisors.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Joanna Torres. I'm the Director of Student Enrollment Services, and we are an office that is a one-stop servicing of financial aid, billing and payments, and academic records.
All right, I guess I'll get us started. So again, parents, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Um, we truly enjoy having these conversations, and this information is for you all to take to your respective families, and hopefully at the end of the presentation, you'll have some questions for us. We love to answer questions and give you as much information as we possibly can. So our advisement center is located in Robinger Hall in room 140. We are located in two floors, the first and sub-level location. And this is where we meet with our students. It's also a place where students can stop by during business hours to get some of their urgent questions answered. And many of us are available throughout the day to assist them and help them with navigate some of their academic inquiries and questions.
So, what every family should know. So, at this point, we understand that um, college is a decision that students make because we hope that they want to be here and that it is something important for them to be able to accomplish and for them to be able to say, like, you know what? Mom, dad, whomever, I did it. Um, so at this point, one of the things that we put together is four reasons. So the first thing is academic decisions impact time to graduation. And that essentially means that at the end of the day, every class that a student takes has a purpose. Every decision that a student makes when they are at the university also has a purpose and can also impact their time to graduation. Something that can become, or that is supposed to be 4 years for some students, can become even 5, depending on the decisions that they make. Um, Time to graduation affects overall college costs, and Joanna is going to talk a little bit more about it. But the longer the student is here, the more money they're going to spend while they're here. Course planning, credit load, and major choice all matters. So every major that we have at the university is different. They require a different amount of credits. And essentially, if a student doesn't follow an academic plan and they don't meet with an advisor, that can impact pretty much the graduation timeline. And lastly, academic advisors help students stay on track academically. That's why we always throughout this presentation are going to emphasize the importance of the student meeting with the advisor because at the end of the day, we're here for a purpose, which is to make sure that the student graduates. That's what we want. And sometimes we want to just make sure that students are following the path because sometimes they don't. And it is okay, but they always need to be informed and they always need to work with one of us to make sure that at the end of the day, we get them to the finish line.
So our role as advisors at the university is to co-pilot our students through their academic trajectory and ultimately reach their goal of graduation. In the first year, students experience what we call a willpower class, where we go through all the resources and all the academic information and also departments that can assist the student to really be involved and as well as get the assistance that they need in order to be successful at the university. Uh, we typically do have a 4-year plan. Obviously, it's always it's always subject to change based on how their academics turn out each semester. So I had students in the past where they graduated in 3 years, some in 3.5 years. As my colleague eloquently put it, academics and choices of classes do impact their academic and graduation trajectory. We all know, as myself being a parent, how important it is to have the right selection of credits and also getting to graduation within a timely period of where the student can achieve a, a speedy graduation. Ideally, we like our students to graduate in 4 because, and this will be explained later, is the longer a student spends at the university, the more money it will cost essentially, right? So academics is a very, very important conversation that we have with our students. The better you are, the more focused you are, the faster you get through. Um, and every student will not have a clean path towards graduation. There's going to be challenges, and we work with different departments, but we are the first point of contact for every student when they are facing those challenges. We work with the Wellness Center. We work with enrollment services. We work with financial aid, the registrar's office, academic support center. We like to link all our students to any resource that we see fit or that we see that they need help with, so that this way they don't feel like they're alone in this journey. In fact, we like to remind our students like your tuition is paying for all these services, so it's always good to utilize as many services as you possibly can to be successful.
Next. Thank you. So to understand graduation requirements, I know one of the questions that parents typically have is, how can my student graduate? What are the requirements that they need to make sure that they get to the finish line? And to make it pretty simple, this is essentially the formula that we explain to every student at the university. So most bachelor's degrees require 120 credits, and that is a combination of, for example, your major, which is, let's say, art history or anything like that. And then you have general requirements, which tend to be classes that have nothing to do with your major for the most part, but they are requirements that students have to take, and we call those areas. So for example, students have to take an English course, they have to take philosophy, they have to take a digital class. So there's a lot of different sources and classes that students have to take just to be able to graduate. And this is just to make sure that a student becomes an overall student and not just someone that just comes to the university and just takes the major classes to graduate. Now, with that comes the credit calculation. So typically, the way that I explain to my students, especially in willpower, is you need 120 credits for the most part to graduate, depending on your major. Within 120 credits, you need to learn how to calculate that. I tell students, if you want to graduate in 4 years, the goal is for you to take 15 credits per semester, which equals a total of 30 credits per year. So if during the fall semester, student is taking 15, during the spring semester, the student is taking 15, then at the end of the, let's say, spring 2026, they would have 30 credits completed. Now, let's say if a student unfortunately is not able to take 15 credits because they're taking a foundations course, which is 0 credits, or they don't want to load their schedules up with so many classes, they are more than welcome to take 12 credits. At that point, they will have the options of taking summer classes and even winter courses to be able to get to the 30 credits in a way recommended for students. Now, if they don't want to do that, they don't have to, but that means that every semester or every year, they're going to have a total of 24 credits, which essentially is going to extend their graduation time frame. So the way that I want you to think about it is, if a student doesn't earn 30 credits per year, that means they're behind a certain amount of credits. And they need to talk to an advisor to either get back on track or to figure out a plan if their plan is to graduate a little bit later, to figure out a plan of what makes sense for them. Now, lastly, every graduation timeline is completely different per student. I tell my students, do not compare yourself to your friend, even if you guys have the same major, because at the end of the day, your plan is completely different in regards of the classes that you're able to take, your time management, do you work, do you have responsibilities outside of school? Anything like that can also impact the amount of credits our student is able to take. So with that comes major and program requirements could be different. For example, a psychology major is going to have a completely different amount of credits than a nursing major. The prerequisite sequencing, so every major also follows a different sequence. Some majors require a lot of students to be able to take some classes before they're able to get into the actual major, while other ones allow students to be able to take the classes as they please. We also have course availability. As we know, the later you register, and we tell students, the later you register, the more classes are not going to be available for you. So it is really, really important for them to be able to ensure that they're meeting with the advisor or an advisor to make sure that they graduate and also register. And last but not least, academic performance. Every semester, the students get a GPA and they get their grades back, and they will know how they did academically for that school year, or for that semester, I would say. At that point, my recommendation is if they did amazing in the classes, that's awesome. If they didn't, they definitely should connect with an advisor to make sure that we're able to review their account, because Joanna is going to explain later that could impact their financial aid, but also that is going to impact their graduation time frame. So it is really, really important for them to be able to work with one of us in the office. Next.
All right. So, as explained by my colleague, and I just wanted to piggyback on what she was saying in the previous slide. It matters that they finish a number of credits each semester, but also it matters that the student and family member always checks the invoice, their balance, because that is important. Um, because there will be holes that will be placed in the event something is not paid on time, or if there's something missing, or anything like that. It will be explained later. But this does impact students in terms of when they access classes and the window of opportunities for the availability of those classes to be available, and what they're going to take for that semester. All of this is cumbrous to what impact it will have when they register for classes. Now, going back to graduation requirements, as I explained, majority of our programs are 120 credits, with the exception of music, art, nursing, and then I may be forgetting one, and education. It has to do with kinesiology, if I'm not mistaken. But everything else is 120 credits. Our core requirements are now 43. There's a foreign language requirement, which is 6 credits. Some students could test out of it. And depending on your major, it could range anywhere between 38 credits up to 83 credits. I'm just using nursing as an example, music being a big one. So any of those programs can impact the number of credits required, but for the most part, it is a minimum of 120 credits. Now, there is ways to expedite graduation. Again, if a student is taking 12, but they feel comfortable taking some classes in the summer, you could offset the timeline by taking some classes in the summer and the winter. If you are that student that likes to only take 12 credits, and I have students in that scenario that do that and they still finish out in 4 years. Just to give you a quick math, if a student is only taking 12 and they're not taking the 15, if you calculate, it is 8 semesters to complete a degree. 8 times 3 is 24. So you're looking at approximately an additional 12 credits each a semester. You're looking at an additional 2 semesters in addition on top of the 8 semesters, just to give you a quick math. But it also depends if the student is taking summer or winter sessions, which is what we offer. And this is every time a student meets with the advisor, we review what is called degree works. We review their list of classes that they have completed, that are in progress. This is information that is given to the student. So it should never be a surprise to a student as to, oh my gosh, I'm missing 3 credits, 6 credits. Again, it goes back to how well you planned and how the communication you maintain with your advisor to be successful and to complete courses in a timely manner. Go
I
ahead,
would
Miss
say
Anna.
with this picture here, if you see the graduation requirements, you have the Bachelor's of Arts and a Bachelor's of Science. It's just for you to have an idea, for example, on how their degree works in a way looks when they're about to be ready to graduate. So, for example, one of the things that I tell my students is you know that you're gonna graduate when you see everything in a check mark, and also you see this little blue thing right here. So anything in blue, that means that you are completing this semester. That means that you're enrolled in the class that you're taking and you're going to finalize a requirement that is specific semester that you're registered for. Everything in green, that means that you're already done with that requirement. You don't have to worry about it. So I always tell my students, if it is your last semester at William Patterson, the number one thing that you need to make sure that you have right now is once you have a meeting with us in regards to registration and you're registering for your classes, you need to ensure that you go to your degree works and double check this. If everything looks like this, that means that you're all set. If something is missing, that means that you need to talk to an advisor, or the student should talk to an advisor as soon as possible to inquire about what is a requirement missing for my degree work. Because sometimes it could be two things. Sometimes they didn't register for a specific class that they should have, or it could simply be that the registrar has to go into their account and adjust something for them. So it is important for this to communicate with us because at the end of the day, they could be doing everything also amazing, and it could just be something on the system that needs to be updated. So they also need to take, I would say, advocate for themselves when it comes to things like that, because at the end of the day, this is their trajectory and this is their academic path. So as much as we want to help them, they also need to make sure they're on top of their academics and everything that they need at the university. Next. So when it comes to using summer and winter courses, this is a few tips that we have for all of you. So one of the most important things that I tell every student is summer and winter courses could definitely help you if you have the time for them. So what I'm saying, if you have the time for them, because one, for winter courses, you have to pay 100% out of pocket for them. For summer courses, there are a few things that you could do, and Joanna might explain it later. But for winter courses specifically, you have to pay for them. It's out of pocket, and they cost about 1,000 plus. At that point, the winter and summer courses tend to be really beneficial for students that want to either get ahead of the game and they want to graduate a little bit early, or they even want to take the pressure off taking 15 credits every semester. It depends on the student. And two, it allows them to essentially catch up if they had a difficult semester. They are able to also have the classes for the most part online. A lot of courses that we offer for during the winter and the summer, except for like some science courses, tend to be asynchronous. So what I mean by that is students have the flexibility of doing these classes and being home or being on vacation. They don't have to be physically in the classroom. It does require a lot of time management and the classes to be fast paced because it's a short period of time. However, they're worth it for students that are really set in regards of like what they want. They're good with time management and they can keep track of their academics because at the end of the day, summer and winter courses also impact their GPA and will also impact how they move forward academically at the university. We always advise students to consult with advisors when it comes to registering for these courses and also financial aid to make sure that one, if they're paying for it, how are you paying for that? You need to know those answers. And also two, are you gonna have the bandwidth to be able to take these classes? Now, we have a lot of tools to stay on track at William Patterson, and we every semester we'll tell students you have DegreeWorks, which should be your best friend. You also have Navigate, which should be your second best friend as well. These are tools that students use every semester to keep track of their academics, to keep track in regards of like how they're doing in their classes, to communicate with advisors. Anything that they need is there. They also have to meet with advisors every semester. So if a student is a freshman, they're required to meet with advisors a minimum of twice per semester. Once they become sophomores and up, that means that they meet with advisors at least once a semester. However, we encourage students to meet with us as many times as they want to. If they find a spot, if they want to meet with us every week, they're more than welcome to. We are not opposed to it. It's up to the student, but they are required to meet with us twice during freshman year and once moving forward. They also need to meet with us for registration and planning. Advisors are always sending emails out to students, especially during registration time. If a student is telling you, I do not know how to register, I haven't heard from my advisor, no one is helping me, tell them check your email because you are getting correspondence from us from the registrar, from anywhere, and even navigate. So students are always getting information. When it comes to academic support services and tutoring, advisors also send out reminders to students. We also have a lot of resources around campus that students will go, for example, to the student center, and all of the resources are posted there. Students are able to take pictures, and even when they talk to the professor, they have office hours as well. So there's a lot of things that students can take advantage of. And every time they, especially in willpower, we make sure to kind of let the students know, make sure you're using the resources because one, you're paying for them. And two, if you're struggling, we have the resources here to help you. So make the decision to help yourself as well. And one of the biggest things that I want parents to help us out with, at least, is make sure that you have a conversation with your student and let them know to advocate for themselves. I think that's the biggest thing because at the end of the day, we want to help them as much as we are able to, but sometimes students are afraid to speak. Sometimes they don't want to ask for help. But at the end of the day, we're here to help them. We want to make sure that they utilize us. We want to make sure that at the end of the day, they graduate. That's our goal. And for us to be able to do that, we need for them to be able to communicate, to let us know some of the challenges that they're having, or like if they need any support, if they need any services, like for example, the social worker, whatever the case may be, we are here to help them. That's our main goal.
I did want to touch a quick point on you had indicated the financial aid for winter and summer. So for winter, while there is no aid available, there were some state programs like EOF that would consider a winter class for a student, but that state funding has been since removed. Then what we have done is to kind of help students along for the students that do actually need to take a winter class. Sometimes they need that winter class in order to be able to take a prerequisite for a class that they're going to take in spring. So I've worked with financial aid to see if there's any leftover money from the fall that we may be able to kind of like award and get a little extra money for fall to then cover that winter class. Sometimes students are expecting a refund for fall and they get that refund money, but they have to remember that if they are going to be expected to possibly take a class for winter, they should be, have at the back of their mind that while they're getting a refund check for the fall semester based on financial aid, they may want to hold on to those funds and not spend it because they might want to take that winter class to advance in their studies. And the same thing goes for spring semester as well, going into if they're wanting to take or advance their studies and using summer aid, it's a good thing to utilize that refund for their summer aid. In the summer, there are some programs from the state and from the federal government that do align and allow for a student to get extra summer aid as long as the student is registered for 6 or more credits. And there is definitely a separate application that opens up for financial aid where students that are interested in taking that summer session will register for the 6 credits in the summer, and then they complete what is called a summer financial aid application, which we have on our WP Connect portal. And then the financial aid counselor will review that student's request for summer aid. We'll tell them this is how much you're eligible for, and then the student can make a decision on whether or not that aid is sufficient and meets their needs in order to continue for the summer. So there are a number of resources. My best response is if a student does not know whether or not they have any eligibility to help them with these extra semesters, always contact us in Student Enrollment Services and we'll be able to take a quick look and let them know if there's any form of eligibility that we can kind of recognize ahead of time. Next plot.
I want to say something. I want to go back to something that Paola was saying before about open communication when challenges arise. I often see it a lot when families reach out to me and we are at the end of the semester, right? So at that point, it's a little difficult to try to kind of like mitigate what we can do as collaborators in order to make sure that the student is able to be successful in the semester. But as family, like as a parent, I think we have a good hunch as to how our student is doing based on the conversations that we're having with them. So if you do see that your student is struggling, I would rather you kind of like reach out to me early enough in the semester to let me know so that we could put your student under the radar of the academic advisor, or if it's not an academic challenge, it may be like something else where they may require like a referral to counseling, health and wellness, or even like tutoring, doing early intervention is critical to ensure for the success of the student. Once we reach that end of the semester, sometimes it's really hard to be able to do anything. That was it.
All right. So we touched upon a lot of these pointers here. Um, but things that will impede or will create challenges is not communicating with your advisor, not being up to par with the information sent from the university, or ignoring emails, not doing follow-ups. And as my colleague Eva said, like a lot of these things can be mitigated early on, right? When you enter into reactive mode as opposed to proactive mode, sometimes we work miracles. We do. We like to do so, but it is not conducive to do so every time. That's not going to work out like we all want it to. But if something is addressed early, then it can be talked about, it could be evaluated to see if the challenge can be mitigated and resolved, hopefully. And we have done that in the past, but most of the time it is done so by being proactive. Um,
Can I
and
mention something, Castro?
yes, go ahead.
Sorry, something that I was gonna say is when it comes to student, one of the biggest thing is the academics, right? Because at the end of the day, we want to make sure that they do well. But I know that especially the first and second semester, a lot of students tend to struggle because it's a big commitment for one, it's a big change, it's a big transition, and we understand that 100% that there's gonna be challenges that arise, right? But one of the things is we try to give them grace. We try to work with them. We try to like help them understand, like, we're here to help you. These are the resources that we have. But now, after the second semester, we always give them grades, but it's like, okay, how can we move forward? So we have this thing that is called academic standing or probation, right? Is the number fifth on the academic choices at the late graduation. So one of my biggest thing is that I want parents to understand if a student falls below a 2.0, they are either on academic warning or academic probation. Typically for academic warning is the first time. Let's say they are on academic warning the first semester, they got below a 2.0. Okay, you got another semester to try it out. If you get above a 2.0, you get out of the academic warning standing. Now, let's say unfortunately the student did not perform well and it happened again and did not perform well, the GPA went down a little bit more, then that's when they go into academic probation. Now, the beautiful thing that we have at William Patterson now to help the student is that we have academic coaches. And it's because we really care about the students. We want to make sure that they do well. So the academic coaches essentially work with students, and they meet with them. Some of them they meet on a weekly basis. Some of them they meet like bi-weekly. It depends on the student's need and how close they are to that 2.0, because every student is different. However, they are working not only with the advisors, but they're working with someone else that's keeping track of them. That's telling them like, hey, we have this event coming up. We have this workshop that's going to help you do well in your classes when it comes to time management. And then they have to also attend tutoring on top of that. So we are making sure that at the end of the day, the student is getting that extra support. But we are also on top of that, just making sure that they are becoming overall students in the sense of like, it's not about academics. We want to make sure they're doing well physically, mentally, emotionally. So we always check in on them. Just because we want to make sure they move forward, but they also get out the academic standing because Joanna is going to explain later. We don't want them to lose financial aid. We want them to continue at the university. Mr. Kasha, you can continue.
Yes, so to add to what my colleague was saying, essentially, if you delay your graduation, I always tell my students, the more time that you spend in school, the loss of wages and potential earnings that you lose as well, right? So if a student graduates in four, there's always the potential of going into a career, into a position on average. This is just average. I'm just throwing out a number out there that you all made 55 and 65 positioning yourself where you can repay back loans if you have those loans or start earning some money, right? But if you delayed a year or two, that's a loss of 2 years of potential salary that you could have been doing as opposed to have spent all that time delaying your academics or repeating classes or not doing your due diligence to finish it within a time frame. I don't want to go too much into finances because my colleague Ms. Torres is gonna has an amazing presentation on that end. Don't want to spoil it, obviously, but on the academic end, we really put emphasis on this because at the end of the day, at the end of the day, it's all about the cost, the investment. I always tell my students, you're investing in yourself. So if you have to buy that book, if you have to get certain things for school, it should be well worth it because this investment that you're doing now is very small and the earnings and the reward are much, 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 much bigger. So please keep that in mind because it actually saddens me when I hear students say, "Oh, these books are too expensive." Well, college, that's what's expected of college. College has expenses, but the cost at the end of it all is worthwhile because the earnings over a lifetime are gonna, if a person really does their due diligence and they're really successful, their earnings will overpass over $1 million over the lifetime of their work experience. So you have to look at it from that standpoint in terms of this is just, and I told this to my students, it's a little corny, but if you look at a clock, at a regular clock, it goes twice around to make up 24 hours. I tell my students that in that clock in your lifetime, college only represents 4 minutes out of the entire clock. So parents, I'm telling you the same, right? These are just 4 minutes in the lifetime, in the clock timeline of what they're going to be experiencing in college for the rest of their life and how this is going to impact them going forward as future professionals, as future career people.
And one of the things that I wanted to add to that is that again, the communication is key. If you have a student that hasn't been able to purchase the book, and we know that that book is something that they need in order to be able to keep up with their workload, in order to be able to do their homework assignments, and if it's been like a month into school and they have not obtained the book and it's preventing them from doing assignments, that is kind of leading to them not really maximizing on their one, they're taking the most out of their coursework, and two, it could lead to them possibly having or leading to a failing grade, or even sometimes some students end up withdrawing. And so these are stressors that often occur with students, and the sooner that they can talk about it with their academic advisor or even with their WP 101 advisor, the sooner that they can articulate and say, hey, I'm having an issue with this, the sooner that, we can be tapped in to say, okay, let's take a look at your finances. Let's take a look and see how we can kind of help you get that book or even laptop, right? And let's see how we can kind of get you moving along in your courses and see if there's any way that the faculty member can work with you in order to have you help catch up. So communication is absolutely key because we're not going to know these things.
When that mind reader, sorry.
So
And
one
to,
of,
and
oh
sorry,
yeah,
John, and to
yeah.
finalize our point is just remember communication with students. Please let them know to speak to us. We appreciate any conversation we have with them. We're here to help. That's the most important thing, and we'll connect them with any resources that they may need. Thank you. You could go ahead, Joanna.
Yeah, thank you. So one of the things that I wanted to point out with this slide, and I know that we've said it a few times already in this conversation, is I just want to point out like kind of some financials for you. So a full-time student that is an undergraduate in-state student is paying $8,374 per semester, and here's a caveat, between 12 and 19 credits. So that price is a fixed price, what we call a flat rate, for any student who is taking between 12 and 19 credits. They're not going to be paying any more than that. So as you know your student, this is where it's important to kind of like identify, all right, how do I get my students to maximize their course loads um, to this fixed sticker price for per semester for this year. That's what the price is for this year. And with keeping in mind that tuition is increasing year over year, right? Um, So in case we have any out-of-state parents here, the out-of-state rate is 13,507. Same thing, between 12 and 19 credits for the undergraduate students. And what we do is that we award an out-of-state waiver, which reduces the cost to match the in-state rate. So generally speaking, you're going to see a charge for the 13,507, but then it's offset with a scholarship that's going to bring that price down to 8,374 per semester. So how does that kind of play into things? And the reason why I want you to understand that freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior level is because that also impacts financial aid awards and how financial aid awards are distributed. So a student that is only taking 12 credits in the fall, 12 credits in the spring, they're only earning 24 credits. Once they go to year two, they're only going to be considered a freshman. So their financial aid is going to be limited to the financial aid freshman amounts based on federal guidelines and what they should be receiving. If they take 15 credits fall, 15 credits spring, they would have earned 30 credits, which now starting year two, yes, they're going on to their sophomore year. But a student in year two that still continues taking 12 and 12, they're only going to earn 40 credits in that second year, 48 credits in that second year. They're going to still be a sophomore going into year three. And then in year three, they're going to still be a junior going into year four. So by that, what that means is that if they're still kind of like a junior where they should have been, or a sophomore where they should have been a junior, that's going to limit the amount of the state aid that they're going to be receiving because now they're not going to be eligible for Garden State Guarantee funding that they may be eligible for from the state. And then also their loan limits are going to be limited to the sophomore year loan limits if they are accepting loan amounts. But a student who is taking 18 credits in the fall, 18 credits in the spring, is earning the degree to progress they're earning at a much faster rate. So a student that is taking 18 credits per semester is saving a semester, which means that they're saving $8,000 for that last semester. And if they can get, there are ways of, that like we were talking about, they can kind of like start taking summer classes, and some summer aid is available to them, and then some winter classes. So that means that a student that's maximizing their 18 and then they're taking another 6 credits, they're even saving another whole semester's worth of tuition. So these are things that I want you to consider as the students are moving along and as you're kind of like looking at their degree works and their progress. And yes, decisions that they're making, because they could be taking 18 credits in the fall, 18 credits in the spring. But if it's the wrong credits or the wrong classes, that's going to set them back because as Ms. Chaparro and Mr. Castro indicated earlier, they have to have fulfilled certain criteria based on their majors, based on certain sections in their degree progress. So it is very important that if they don't understand what class they need to take to fulfill a section, it's not just registering for credits, it's actually taking the right classes that is going to get them there sooner. In other words, we don't want them to waste their time. We like it when they graduate early. I personally attend all the graduation ceremonies because I love to see them walk across stage. And so this is something that we want to see them maximize on their time here. So the other part that it kind of impacts are scholarships, right? So you might have had your student come in as a freshman. Most of the freshman scholarships, they do require, yes, a full-time enrollment, and full-time enrollment is 12 or more credits. But they're mostly only for 8 consecutive semesters, which is 4 years. So if your student now needs a 5th year, they might not get that scholarship for that last year. Honor students, same thing. They're probably not going to get that honors award for that final year. And if you're an out-of-state student, that out-of-state scholarship waiver is only good for the 4 years. So maximizing the classes, making sure that you're taking advantage of the course offerings. The sooner that they register is so important. We have students that have not yet fulfilled some financial aid requirements, still have a fall balance. Classes started a week ago, and they're still trying to get into a class now. those students have a whole week to try to catch up with courses. We don't want that happening because that's already putting them in a position where they might not be successful in that course. And if it's like a AP course or some sort of science course where it's 4 credits, that is quite a bit hefty workload to try to catch up. So we want students to complete their financial aid requirements, complete all of the requirements, meet with academic advisors earlier rather than later. That way they're guaranteed that they're getting the courses and the right courses that they need in order to be able to maximize that graduation and graduate sooner. Federal Pell Grants. So this is the Pell Grant is the free financial aid that families will be eligible for once they do the FAFSA. And so once awarded, the students will have a maximum limit of 12 semesters. And yes, so 12 semesters does give you a little bit longer time frame for students to graduate, but a student who's constantly changing their mind about their major might be facing this maximum time limit for their 12 semesters, and it's based on eligibility. So you might be eligible for Pell this year, and if you know that the Pell is you're getting the full Pell, which is $7,395 for the year, or about $3,697 for the semester. If we know we have the money now, maximize on those credits now because your income may change for next year. Federal regulations may change for next year, heaven forbid, hopefully not. But these things, just always remember that the aid in future years for these free monies are not always guaranteed. So we have the money at hand. It's best to maximize as much as we can while we have it. Just to note that in the summer, students can have that 6 credit Pell, like I was mentioning earlier, that we have awarding availability for summer at 6 credits. It does take away from one of those 12 semesters. So it would be 8 semesters and then, an additional 4 semesters of summer Pell. So these are things that you can consider in order to maximize the time, get out sooner, but also note that there is that max level. Tag award is the consideration. So once a student does a FAFSA, if they are a New Jersey resident, the FAFSA will move over to the New Jersey state site and the application will be available for students. A student who is also a DACA student and not eligible for federal aid, but may be eligible for state aid, they have to complete the alternative application, have to provide proof of income, have to provide all sorts of things to be eligible for state aid based on the criteria, right? Income criteria and what have you. But it's same thing. The student with that it receives a New Jersey tag, their max limit is 9 semesters, and that's based on eligibility. And just to note, something I do tell my families, if you have a Pell Grant of per semester of $36.97, and you have a tag award per semester, which a full needy student will get a $4,700 award. When you do the math of the $36.97 and the $47.48, that pretty much pays the semester in full. So I would say maximize the financial aid where you can. Some students do need to work, and I get that they do have to work, but perhaps, if they register sooner, they'll be able to get an asynchronous schedule where that asynchronous class may be able to tie in with their work, right? Because I know that in today's economy, work is sometimes a must for some students, and we understand that. Meeting with the advisors earlier on is key to be able to get into those classes because they do fill up quickly. Pledge for Success is also an award, and the Garden State Guarantee are also awards that are contingent upon deadlines. So I'm going to talk in the next few slides about the deadlines, but a student in their freshman or junior or sophomore year will be eligible for the Pledge for Success, and it's basically gap funding for students who are income under 65,000 per year. But there's deadlines for those applications, and if the deadline is not met, those are strict deadlines for that award. Similarly, the New Jersey Garden State Guarantee is the same award for a junior and a senior, and that is from the state. The state awards that funding. It is important that deadlines are completed on a timely basis, and that is also for families with incomes, adjusted gross incomes of 65,000 or under. Okay, so let's see. I think I've talked about all of the funding options, the high need, and the 12 credit enrollment. And here are the deadlines. So this is the important deadlines for the New Jersey State grant. So again, this is the TAG award or any New Jersey grant and the Garden State Guarantee for a junior and a senior. But we also look at these same deadlines in order to award the student the Pledge for Success, which is our grant that we mimic the New Jersey grant for freshmen and sophomore students. So for this spring, the deadline is fast and coming. So if there is a student that has documents that need to complete, and they received a TAG award last year, this deadline, actually it says 2/15, but it really is 4/15. I did a typo there. My apologies. But we need to make sure that the students complete their FAFSAs by April 15th of every year. And so last year, the students, in order to get their spring awards and get all these things done for this year, they needed to complete their FAFSA by April 15th. The same thing this year. You need to make sure that you do the 26-27 FAFSA by April 15th of 2026 in order to remain eligible for next fall and next spring. If you have documents, if you log into NJFAM's portal, which is the link is on this page, have your student log in or create an account and then log in. The deadline, if there's some documents that need to be submitted for consideration, the deadline for that document submission is March 1st, or else if it is not submitted by that day, you have the potential to lose your spring aid. And if you saw in the other page, it's upwards of $4,000 just for the tag. And if a student's eligible for Garden State Guarantee, then that would include that amount as well. Students can create their own username profile under this page if they have not so already, and the sooner that they do it, the better. The better in order for you to know where you stand with this award. Federal deadlines. So this is for the FAFSA, and the FAFSA school code, which you may know already, is the 002625. If you have not already, do your 26-27 FAFSA as soon as possible. I always say, do it during the holidays when your son or daughter is at home, so that way we make sure that we meet all sorts of deadlines, including any deadline that we may have with any other application on campus. So again, the important thing is to make sure that you have submitted that April 15th deadline. And for this year, if you have not yet done the FAFSA for this year, it's still not too late. We could still apply for the FAFSA for this current spring semester. And the tax that you would be doing, the forms that you would be doing would be the 25-26 FAFSA for this spring. And this summer, by the way, and the tax information that you would be using to report that is the 2023 tax information. Summer financial aid is available starting in March when students start registering for classes, and that application is on WP Connect. And the same thing for your 26-27 FAFSA. The tax data to be reported for that is 2024 taxes. So we're usually 2 years prior to ensure that all families would have completed their taxes, because I know sometimes some students or some families have extended tax deadlines, so they've gone back 2 years prior in order for tax information. So we were talking about satisfactory academic progress, and we mentioned this quite a bit in the earlier conversations. So I wanted to lay out the criteria here, because once the students stop having a cumulative, so cumulative means overall GPA of 2.0 or better, and if their completion rate is less than 67% of their attempted credits, students can start losing their financial aid. So the 67% completion is where students kind of get a little caught up too. Not only the 2.0, because that one is a little bit more visible, but the 67% attempted completion rate is where families kind of really need to start paying attention. So if you heard me earlier, I talked about students withdrawing for, like, they'll register for 12 credits and then they withdraw from one class because they might not be doing well in it. So as they're attempting to take 12 credits and they withdraw from the one class, Their total earned credits, it's now 9 credits. So they earned 9 out of 12 attempted credits. When you divide 9 by 12, then that's a completion rate. So now once you start doing that in for the entire trajectory, like as you're looking at the students, um, you're looking at their transcripts. Let's say a student who's completed 100 credits and or attempted 100 credits, and they've only completed 67 out of those 100 credits, then that means they've only completed 67% out of 100, right? So there could be not only does it consider that you're now like you're hitting those maximum limits almost, but now your financial aid can be taken away because you're withdrawing from too many classes. Or students that have changed their mind on their majors, sometimes they're now having to take extra classes, and then now they're meeting their maximum credit attempted, which means that some students by like year 5, they've already earned 180 credits but don't have their degree yet because they've changed their major so many times that they haven't fulfilled those degree requirements. So at those point in times, financial aid is going to say, well, we really need to know what's going on. We need you to complete this appeal. And this appeal, a committee will review it and determine if you can get aid for one more semester. And then you have like a second chance to say, okay, I have one more semester, but I can't get a failing grade. I can't withdraw from any more classes. And I need to make sure that I'm on my A game for these classes, right? Like not even a D is considered, right? So we don't want students to get into that predicament where they're already starting to withdraw from too many classes because they're afraid of failing, but then they're also like failing classes where they're not at least a 2.0 or better for a GPA. And just so you know, students need to have a cumulative 2.0 GPA in order to graduate, even if they've already completed all of their credit load requirements. That's a minimum GPA for graduation. So this is why we're talking about early interventions, right? If a student is feeling that this is starting to happen, a lot of conversations with their academic advisors, a lot of work with the student success teams, a lot of work with tutoring, um, and then communicating with us so that we can kind of like make sure that they're on track in terms of financial aid eligibility and making sure that they're not losing their aid. Um, and if that SAP appeal, when students are completing it, sometimes they're not putting much effort into it. And the committee really needs to know what's happening because a student could have had a concussion and not been able to complete their course load. Then we need that documentation, right, for that concussion protocol that they had to take. Um, if a student had to work X amount of hours and they had to help, you know, fulfill certain things that certain expenses that they are responsible for, really talking about how that all that extra work is really impacting their studies and what they're doing to remedy it, right? Are they going to do asynchronous classes? Are they going to do all these things, right? Like really talking about that on their appeal really does make an impact. Some students will not say much and then their SAP appeal gets denied. Once the SAP appeal gets denied, there's no appealing again for next semester. That's it. They have to come out of that probation status on their own, and they have to get a 2.0 or GPA or better, or a 67% completion rate or better for them to regain their aid. So if they're struggling with that SAP appeal, it's important that they connect and we can help support that because sometimes they don't even know why they didn't do well in school and we could help them kind of like identify what those pieces are. Um, so it's important also too that the SAP appeal that is completed by the deadline. So for instance, for the fall semester, the SAP appeal students had until December 15th to complete it. We had students logging in at 11:30 at night trying to complete that SAP appeal, and then they didn't get it in on time before the deadline. That presents a problem. The system's not going to let them get in. And these are processes that are federally regulated. So this is something that we have to abide by federal regulations. So we can't start making exceptions for students on these. All students have to follow the same appeal process. And that is it for my presentation. So this is one of Paola and Caesar's slides. So I will give it back to them.
Thank you so much. So to finalize that part, this is our contact information for the Advisement Center. We do have over 16 advisors currently, so every student is assigned to someone that they work with. If you have any question, well, if the student has any questions, any concerns, they could always email asktheadvisor@wpunj.edu. If you have any questions, concern, please connect with Eva, and then Eva will definitely let us know how we can be best of support or how we can work with your student. But this is our contact information. We're open Monday to Fridays, 8:30 to 4:30, and we look forward to hopefully eventually meeting you all in person.
Thank you. Thank you so much. This was very, very insightful. And I really do hope that families are able to take this information to their students, and just have conversations. What are the expectations? When a student is kind of like not doing well, what are the steps that we're going to take together, so that we could ensure that that student is going through the motions and getting the things that they need done. Before we open the floor for questions, we appreciate your feedback, right? Like we want to know if you found the session informative. So if you could please scan the QR code. It's a very brief survey. Just let us know what you thought. I will be sending this out also in an email with the recap for the session and the recording. And I really do listen. I really do implement any changes that, families kind of like bring up, and I thrive on that. So any feedback is very, very appreciated. So with that said, if you have any questions, please let us know. Please take advantage of this time where Paola, Joanna, and Mr. Castro are here to answer your questions. It's more of a little bit intimate setting. So please feel free to ask any questions that you may have. You could unmute, come on video if you want.
I can't see the chat, but I don't know if there was any questions in the chat from earlier. No?
There are no questions in the
Okay.
chat. I'm actually going to go into the questions that were submitted ahead of time. So we went over, there were some questions about financial assistance. One of the and I think that we kind of like went over that. We're also going to have another session where we're gonna go a little bit more in depth into what students can do and how families can support them to ensure that they're maximizing on other aid that may be available to them. That's going to be a little bit later on in the semester. But can we talk about a little bit how zero credit classes affect student progress?
Well, from an academic standing, so a lot of students, for example, well, not a lot of students, some students, when they come into the university, and they didn't take the placement test or they didn't perform well on the placement test, one of the classes that they take will be Foundations of Math or Foundations of Reading or both, depending on which, like if they didn't pass both of them. And that means that if a student didn't pass both of those classes or the placement, I'm sorry, that means that they will have to take one during the fall semester and another one during the spring semester. When it comes to classes like this, essentially what students are placed into is for them to take 12 credits for those 2 semesters in order for them to be able to pass those classes. So in that way, they can start taking 15 credits. The reason as to why the university typically advises that for students is because at the end of the day, that is a class that is going to impact their ability to be able to move forward in any other course that the student needs. So think about it this way. Foundations of Reading is a requirement and a prerequisite for a lot of the even major courses or even area courses, so general requirements a student is going to need. So they need to be able to pass that class in order to be able to move forward. Same thing for math, for the Foundations of Math. Foundations of Math is a prerequisite of some of the courses, depending especially on their major, that they're going to have to take in order to be able to move forward. Now, where it kind of in a way goes back into what we were talking about. It affects the amount of credits a student is able to take, which can impact their graduation timeline, which can impact their financial aid. Now, when students are taking 12 credits, like that's what we were saying, they can meet with an advisor. The advisor could either help them take summer classes, or we can even create a plan. Because at the end of the day, like I tell my students, just because you didn't take 15 credits your first semester or even your second semester, it doesn't mean that you're not going to graduate on time. There's ways that we can get you back on track. It's just more like, what are you willing to do to get there? Are you open to taking 18 credits in like, 2 semesters? Are you willing to take summer? Are you willing to take winter? So we try to find alternatives for them to be able to get back on track. Unfortunately, there are students that cannot handle 15 credits, and that is completely okay. There's nothing wrong with taking 12 credits. There's nothing wrong with graduating later. Because at the end of the day, every student is different. But if the student really wants to graduate on time, there are many opportunities that they're able to take for them to be able to get there. And it doesn't have to be the first year. It could be a little bit later on. They just need to communicate and let us know. But the zero credit course is willpower is zero credit as well, by the way. But when they're taking willpower and they're not taking any foundation classes, they're gonna take the 15 credits. If a student doesn't have 15 credits on their schedule and they're not taking any foundation courses, that means that one, they either chose to take 12 credits, or two, they forgot to either register for a class, or maybe they told the advisor that they don't want to take more than the amount said. But typically, we advise every student to take 15 because I tell my student that's the magic number, essentially, that they need.
If I could add to that, the upside to those zero credits, when a student does not pass their placement test, the intent of the university is to help that student academically, essentially over time to move forward. So there's no cost to the student to take a course where they need assistance in order to move on to a college credited course, right? So the upside to that is that while the student did not pass that test or that placement test, the school does not penalize that individual by having them charge for credits for a foundational course where we want to see the students succeed. And if they need that additional help, which is what that indicates, not passing the placement test, given that additional help for no extra cost, so that this way, as my colleague explained, they can move accordingly through each semester. And like it's been mentioned, there are many ways in which a student, if they're only taking 12 credits in a semester, they can take a winter or summer sessions. The upside to that is that the university will not penalize the student simply because they need an additional help. That is a service that is provided by the university at no cost.
I do want to add that just like the same thing with the zero credit courses, where it's like a more of a remedial course, if you have a student that has a language proficiency, so they speak fluent Spanish, good writing, or any other language, they would be able to connect with like the language department, and the advisors will be able to put them in contact with the right people where they can test out and they could earn 3 or 6 credits and only pay like $75 per 3 credit class, right? So that's 6 credits for $150, and that's already kind of advancing the student. So if your student fits one of the categories where they could challenge out of that language, and there's a few other little challenge exams that exist, um, that is something that I always try to help my students along with, and I kind of ask them about those things as we're kind of like talking finances.
Yeah, one of the other courses is like if your student has a CPR certification, they can actually earn 3 credits for that. But we could definitely connect anyone that has a certification like that with the appropriate department so that the credits can be validated and transfer over.
And that CPR certification is only like $20 if students need it. So I give them the links on where to go, and then it's like $20 and they get 3 credits. So it's
Yeah.
something that we kind of like always try to see how we can kind of get the student moving along sooner or
Yeah.
quicker.
So there are no questions in the chat, but Please feel free to send any questions that you may have over email or give me a call, and I'll be happy to kind of answer those questions or point you into the right direction. But with that said, thank you so much to everyone for joining us this evening, and hopefully we get to see you at the next Real Talk. Have a good night.
Good
Thank
night,
you,
everybody.
parents. Thank you,
Thank you.
Thank
colleagues.
you.
Take care.
Have a good night.
Take care.
Take care.
Bye-bye.